How one's culture background influences their gender roles in society. How is gender roles influenced? Many can argue that it is influenced by what is around them as far as social media, school, and the work environment. Others instead believe that culture influences one's gender roles in society. From when you are born to how you are raised within a specific culture, a family can often influence one gender role. Gender roles often vary from culture to culture, which can have an impact on how females and males think and behave within their cultures. So, not all cultures are the same. Gender roles have been around for thousands of years and have been an essential to the survival of humans. For example, back in the day, women of the Native American tribes would go out and gather materials for their families for cooking or even making clothes. They will also almost always take care of the children. The Native American males would go out and hunt, build houses, and even fight in the wars. Today, typically, many Hispanic and Mexican families have always been strict on their daughters more than their sons. As a teenage daughter growing up in a Hispanic household, many weren't allowed to do the same things as a teenage male or son were able to do. Maybe because of safety reasons, but this has always been an essential way of living for thousands of years. And even till today, culture has played a huge part in gender roles.
Over the past few decades, the labor market for women has increased. But in the RGV, women are primarily responsible for the house, childcare, and maintenance of the relationship. And the men are primarily responsible for the financial support of the family. In other areas of the United States, the women are less traditional. A lot of those women are educated, have good paying jobs, and favor gender equality. These women were not expected to do all the house chores and have all the responsibilities like the women in the Hispanic culture. Instead, the chores were split evenly between the man and the women.
The RGV is mainly made up of Hispanic Mexican Americans. The Hispanic women or Mexican women usually are the ones to cater to the family. They're expected to cook, they're expected to clean, they're expected to take care of everyone. And young women are taught at a young age in the Hispanic and Mexican culture that they're supposed to know how to cook well, they're supposed to know how to clean well, or not they're deemed to be a bad wife. And when it comes to men, men typically have this machismo mindset. They're supposed to have this huge front, they're supposed to be strong, they can't show weakness, they're supposed to provide everything for the family financially. I asked some people that I knew, like my grandpa and my friends, dad and grandpa, and I asked them what was it like growing up as a Hispanic or Mexican boy. And they said it was pretty hard because their fathers instilled the thing in their head that they are supposed to be strong, they can't show weakness, they can't cry. They're supposed to be ready for their wife and they're supposed to do the same things that their fathers did for their family. And in The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir, it says, he is told a man doesn't ask to be kissed, a man doesn't look at himself in mirrors, a man doesn't cry, he is urged to be a little man, he will obtain adult approval by becoming independent of adults. He will please them by not appearing to seek to please them. Many boys frightened by the hard independence they are deemed to.
As previously mentioned, there are a lot of machistas here in the Rio Grande Valley. A machista is someone who has a strong or exaggerated sense of traditional masculinity that places great value on physical courage, aggressiveness, and domination over women. This way of thinking is not only shared by men, if not some women here in the Rio Grande Valley, and it's a very close-minded outlook to have in society. This behavior has been seen in the ways Mexican parents in the Rio Grande Valley treat their sons in comparison to how they treat their daughters. A prime example would be the difference in privileges amongst the genders. So once we enter a preteen to teenage years, the conversation of dating starts to emerge. And usually it's at what age does one start dating? For boys, the parents always appear to be more lenient. So if a little 13-year-old boy goes up to their parents and asks, hey mom, I have a girlfriend, is this fine with you? I really like this girl. And the parents are always so supportive. And they even make comments like, I gotta start them off early. You take just after your dad. However, if this conversation emerges with their daughters, parents tend to be more strict or overprotective, and they always hit them with that age restriction. And they always say, oh, when you're 15, you can start dating. Right now, you're still too young. You turn 15 and then they change it to 18. You turn 18 and they simply say, well, as long as you're living under my house, my roof, you follow my rules, which is understandable. However, this kind of protectiveness or restriction follows with the overall concept of virginity and purity. From a very young age, parents, especially Mexican parents, are telling their daughters that their virginity is like a flower. And once you give it, you're never going to get it back. Once you crumble that flower, you can't uncrumble it. So in a way, on one hand, it makes sense because essentially you're teaching your daughters to respect themselves, to know their worth, to know their value. However, this also kind of feels like a backhand slap because we've also get told no boy is going to want a girl who has been tossed around. Or like no husband is going to want a wife who has had multiple lovers. So this line of like worth for women or worth that we're trying to educate our daughters is like very blurred into like, oh, what would a man want in a woman, limiting overall the woman's worth. And even though women are engaging in the same act as men, women will still be shamed for committing said act while men are going to continue to get praise. Setting this mentality from an early age that this is a man's world. It shows the privileges and judgments boys would have in comparison to girls, establishing their superior/inferior relationship among the sexes. And due to this concept being introduced at an early age, the children in the valley can later lead to a sense of entitlement and submission. For instance, from an early age, boys are told that they will one day be the head of the house and carry the role as the provider of the family financially. While on the other hand, girls are taught that they will carry the role as the nurturer of the family and tend to their family's needs first before anything else, following into this stereotypical gender role definition of what a man should be and what a woman should do. And it's like, yes, we have progressed a bit, and we have progress in a sense that more women are getting their education. However, even after certain women get their degree, they're not expected to continue on their career path. It's like, okay, good, you have like your degree, independent woman, but remember, your kids still come first. So we're still like keeping them in a box. And as we're keeping women in a box and not really fully letting them progress, we're in a way doing the same thing with men, because allowing or continuing to follow these gender stereotypical roles, we're also preventing men from expressing or allowing them to show any emotional vulnerability. And as mentioned before, it's like the machista mentality is traditional masculinity. Well, what is traditional masculinity? It's the belief that you have to be strong, you have to be stoic, you can never show emotion, a man cannot cry. And this is further supported in the reading of Homophobia as a Weapon of Sexism, because it states men physically and emotionally abuse women because they can, because they live in a world that gives them permission. So this is truly when accountability also comes into a place. If we're being told from a young age, if we're telling our daughters from a young age that their worth depends on a man's word, then it's like, essentially there's no equal, there's a submission that has to be made. And if men are told this from a young age as well, that this is how like you must treat a girl, or like how you, like when you're looking for your wife, these are like these steps that you want, or the requirements that are needed, it's like, why are they going to care about submission? It's like they're not going to feel this sense of entitlement of like, this belongs to me, this, I can do this. This isn't always a good thing. Men are limited to no emotion expression. They become fragile and begin to associate emotion with vulnerability to weakness, which further goes full circle because of the machista mentality associates women with emotion, labeling us as irrational for being able to express that emotion. So we start cherry picking traits of what makes one superior and one inferior, and it's no longer just about personalities and qualities that that person possesses. If not, we start to focus more on the physical attributes such as gender and race. And to an extent, a hierarchy system is being established in a community where the minority is the majority. This, however, does not mean that the people of the Rio Grande Valley are accepting of all minorities. Racism and colorism is still something that is so prominent in our community that we don't ever discuss and simply turn a blind eye. Or sometimes we even cover it by saying, oh, it's just dark humor, when people make comments such as, mira ese indio, o ese tiene el nopal de la frente. And even then, according to the 2019 census, 98.3% of the Rio Grande Valley population is Hispanic/Latino. Yet we're still so cruel and quick to judge those who appear to be a little bit darker or hold more ethnic features than those surrounded here in our community. And this could be because we are technically supposed to be classified as white, which further creates a division and this sort of identity crisis because we know we're not or will never be accepted by the white community. And we're simply being, once again, put into this box. Further on, something that could have helped support our claim would have been conducting a quantitative research survey that would have simply asked local people here in the Valley their thoughts of machismo, and if they believe that machismo is still prominent in our society, and if that mentality should still be in force, and also like what would their idea or definition of a woman be, and what would their definition of a man be. Thank you, and this concludes our presentation.